Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Williamsburg City Council meeting of February 10th. Ms. Felica, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Ramsey?
Here.
Mayor Pons?
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Here.
Mr. Maslin?
Here.
Thank you. You all have in your packet the meeting minutes of December 20th, January 13th, and February 1st. Are there any corrections or is there a motion to approve?
I move that the minutes be approved.
Second.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
We also have the matter of special privilege, consideration and approval of remote participation request from Councilmember Caleb Rogers for February 10th, 2022, City Council meetings, business session meeting. Is there a motion to approve, or do we want to keep them locked down?
I move that we approve Mr. Rogers' virtual attendance.
Second.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Okay, takes us to now the Excellence in Service Award, which is always a fun time for us. Anna would meet us at the... Hello there. So every once in a while, we get to honor city employees for their excellent service, and today we're going to honor Jolana Burton, because she's done a lot of wonderful things for the city over many years, and so this is our chance to show you how grateful we are. So with that, I'll read the service award here. Ms. Jolana Barton has faithfully and honorably served the citizens of Williamsburg for several years as the public housing administrator. Ms. Burton carries out her duties and responsibility with a high degree of professional integrity while delivering quality service to the public. She is a productive, proactive employee that adheres to all the city workplace safety protocols. Ms. Barton, on a daily basis, demonstrates her passion for the overall well-being of the citizens of Williamsburg. Through her efforts, she has coordinated with numerous volunteers and churches, civic groups, and the College of William and Mary towards delivering goods and services to the residents of the authority. As the public housing administrator, she performs health and safety inspections for all the interior as well as the exterior of the units. In addition, she facilitates work orders, repairs, and rentals, repairs to the rental units at the turnarounds. Sorry about that, Joanne. Ms. Barton has also been instrumental in the development and implementation of the city workforce housing program and provides affordable opportunities for city employees who qualify. Ms. Burton is an exemplary city employee, and she is vital to the success of the Williamsburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority. She is hereby recognized for her dedication to the excellence in keeping the best traditions of public service in the city of Williamsburg. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Say a few words? Oh, I think Nicole's going to take a picture. Would you go ahead?
I would like to thank everybody for this. This is shocking and a big surprise for this. This year would be 19 years that I've been at the Housing Authority, and I didn't see this coming. This is an honor to have this award this year. I appreciate for being nominated. I greatly appreciate this. And to be recognized for this award is something that I greatly appreciate it. So I really appreciate it. I would like to thank my family and my friends for coming and the staff for coming. So I want to thank you again for honoring for this. Thank you.
We can wait for you, Bobby. So that takes us to public hearings. As some of you are aware, we did have the fiber contract to be presented today and some discussion to be had. And first, I'd like to thank city staff for having brought that to us. It was through our collective efforts. We put it in our goals, initiatives, and outcome to implement the 2017 downtown parking study, and you all did a fantastic job in finding the software. But I think council is looking forward to having additional conversation, having some questions answered, so I decided to pull that from the agenda. So we won't be talking about the parking today. So, but again, thank you for all your work. So moving forward, that takes us to consideration and approval of PCR 21-018, request of Castle Development Partners for a special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% up to 1.5 acres for the future development of 162 apartments located at 506 North Henry Street. Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon. PCR 2117 and 2118 are requests from Castle Development Partners for special use permits to increase the density from 14 units per acre to 19 units per acre and encroach on 1.5 acres of 30% slopes at 506 North Henry Street for the construction of 162 apartments in accordance with the proffers dated September 15th, 2020. Planning staff began working with this applicant in early 2020. The applicant presented conceptual drawings to the ARB in May of 2020 and held a community meeting with in Highland Park in August of 2020. In September of 2020, council reviewed and approved the comprehensive plan amendment for this property, moving it from museum support land use to mixed use. At the same meeting, the property was rezoned from museum support to limited business district downtown LB1 with proffers. The proffers state that the applicant shall offer 13% of the total number of apartment units built on the property for rent to persons earning no more than 80% of the median income. This restriction is in place for a period of 15 years from the date of the initial lease of the last unit. The zoning designation, Limited Business District Downtown LB1, allows for an increase in density with a special use permit. The applicant received approval for a special use permit to increase the density from 14 units per acre to 19 units per acre, along with a special use permit to encroach on up to 1.5 acres of slopes in excess of 30%. Subsequent to getting these approvals, the applicant moved forward with purchasing the property from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation in December of 2020. The applicant continued to work on finalizing design plans for the buildings with construction and engineering details. They encountered issues working through the design process due to pandemic-related absences and delays. These delays resulted in the special use permits lapsing in September of 2021, as there was no approved site plan on file. The applicants reapplied for the special use permits and the final site plan approval in September of 2021. They received final ARB approval at the end of September, and the applicants worked through the site plan review process with staff and went on to the regular January 2022 Planning Commission meeting. At the meeting, the applicant's representative spoke along with one member of the public. After a motion to approve the special use permit applications, the Planning Commission vote resulted in a tie of 3 in favor and 3 against. On that basis, the motion to recommend approval failed. As there have not been any changes in this request since the approval in September 2020, staff recommends approval of PCR 2117 and 2118, a request of Castle Development Partners for a special use permit to increase the density to allowed in the Limited Business District LB1 with proffers from 14 units per acre to 19 units per acre, and a request of the special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% up to 1.5 acres as provided in the zoning ordinance, section 21-262, for the future development of 162 apartments located at 506 North Henry Street, with the proffers made on September 15th, 2020. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have. The Stormwater Program Administrator is also present, along with the applicant and the applicant's representatives.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. And just to be clear, you've addressed both of these applications.
Correct, yes, sir.
We'll handle them together. I guess we can, okay. So I don't have any questions before we go to public hearing. Vice Mayor?
Nope, not before public.
Maslin?
Just one question, clarification for City Attorney. It's my understanding that our question really is to approve the continuance of this project, and the only authority we have is an up or yes or no vote. We have no ability to negotiate proffers.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
And that's correct.
Thank you.
I have no questions this time.
Okay. With that, I'll open the public. Thank you, Ms. Berg.
Ms. Pons,
Oh, I'm sorry, Caleb.
I'm behind you, just watching over.
Just don't plop me in the head.
Thank you, Ms. Berg, for that presentation. I had a question around additional fees that might be on top of the normal monthly rent for some of the units. Do we know if utilities are included or if there would be additional parking fees or trash removal fees that are on top of normal rents?
I do not know that, but I believe the applicant should be able to answer those questions for you.
Thank you, then. Those are my questions.
Okay. So I'll open the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward first, and perhaps in your comments, if you could speak to Mr. Rogers' question. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road. You know Tommy Niles with Castle Development. Our pleasure. Yeah, is this better?
Yep.
Yeah. Our pleasure to be here today representing Castle. We're of course here because these two special use permits did expire in the midst of a global pandemic, I might add. We'll be brief. I think first we'll have Tommy talk about where the project is, where it's been, and then I'll close briefly. And we'll answer Mr. Rogers' questions as well.
Welcome, Mr. Niles.
Thank you. I'm a little tall for this. Can I hold it up?
I think you're fine.
Okay,
Just
all right.
Stand up, yeah.
Yes, so we, as you might remember, we started this project in early 2020, worked through some initial concepts of design and brought it forth to the ARB. And during that process, we realized to make the site work, we originally thought we were going to use our plans, some plans that we've used elsewhere, which would have obviously expedited the process along. But once learning the concerns from the city, the ARB, and the neighbors, we realized the only way to properly do this job justice was to start from scratch and design it from the ground up, different than we've done at previous jobs. And so we did that, and in that process, we have been able to get the property rezoned to properly meet the need to allow multifamily. We have previously received the two special use permits that we have also designed this entire project around, one for the density and one for the critical slope. We have gone to the Planning Commission previously. They approved the process. And then we have also recently, after doing the full design and getting everything going, all the back and forths, getting feedback from, fire department, all the city, the engineers, all parties involved, we were able to go ahead and submit their final design to the ARB, and we also got that full approval in the fall. So really what we're trying to do now is finish out this project of where we're getting rid of a defunct, derelict eyesore of a hotel and replacing it with a brand new property that will bring, a clean entranceway into our city, and also provide homes and walkability for residents, and just be a good addition overall.
Thank you. And so I believe Councilman Rogers had two questions about additional fees. Can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. You asked about what additional fees. We on this property, we plan on including the internet, high-speed fiber access to all the residents for free. We also, the only typical cost that the resident incurs would be their water, which is sub-metered, so you pay for what you use and no more, and electricity, and again, that's set up separately with Dominion, and that is as much as you consume is what you pay. And with but the whole property is also to minimize those expenses. Is designed in a way of environmental and different levels of LEED, as well as the Energy Star programs and the water sense faucets and everything. Minimize impact.
All right. Any questions from anybody here?
No?
Mr. Niles, sorry, Vice Mayor Dent, I didn't
Go ahead,
mean to.
Caleb. Go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification around some of the additional cost to utilities. One piece, as I understand it, for 15 years, it'll be tied to 80% of the AMI.
I'm sorry. Not seeing Matt. I'm sorry, continue. Sorry, I was looking.
I hope I can be heard all right.
Yes.
Just curious how the rents might fluctuate for everyone who lives in the establishment, but particularly those who have their rents tied to that AMI as that changes on a yearly basis. Are those expected to go up?
It's hard to say if they go up. I would say traditionally they do go up. Those numbers are based on the average median income that is put out for the Tidewater region, would be the region that it falls under. So, and these are done sectorally by either county or sections by HUD, the government, and they'll take and look at all the data they have for income and go ahead and say this is the median income, and then we're at 80% of that, which the government, that typically falls under the kind of the workforce housing number, that 80% number with most areas. And that gets reviewed annually and adjusted annually to whatever comes out from the government on that number.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have no other questions. I'm sorry, Pat.
Could you talk about, with approval, if you obtain approval, what's your anticipated timeline?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Our plans are, in our minds, complete. We are ready to, we've been working with our financing. It's a process. It goes through a third party group that goes through everything, make sure the deal, then they recommend it to council. We are at that final stage in our financing. Our plans are done as far as we're concerned. We're ready to apply for building permits immediately upon site plan approval. That's, and hopefully as soon as those are received, begin the process in conjunction with financing hitting around the exact same time so that we can, get rid of what's there now and start construction into the final end product. So we're 100% done.
So you have a projected date, a month you're working
Oh,
towards?
yeah. I would say we'd like to apply for demo permits and building permits in March, and by the end of March, and then hopefully start the demo month after, and then have the demo roll right into actual construction and through the end of the project. And the project's estimated start to finish probably about 20 months, 18 to 20 months, barring any major supply shortages or any other kind of unforeseen delays.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
If I could close
Yes.
briefly and get back to the I'm just going to show 3 slides from the presentation we made back in 2020, sort of as a reminder of the many good reasons you approved it then. With respect to the slope SUP, these are isolated slopes with developable area on both sides, and it's a situation where it's actually better to build into the slope to stop the erosion that's going on. And the engineers tell me that the final plans exceed even the proffer requirement of improving runoff by 30%. It's above that, so I think it's a very good proposal for the environment. And with respect to the density SUP, the many good reasons, Tommy mentioned many of them: redevelopment of a closed and deteriorating hotel, high-quality multifamily community with full amenities, superior design, compatibility, the price-restricted units we've just discussed, and project bringing residents within walking distance of downtown, helping the vitality of downtown Williamsburg, and of course the positive fiscal impact it will bring. So we would ask you to reapprove these two SUPs that you granted a year and a half ago, and happy to answer any other questions. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And since we did have those, I just wanted to share real quick the final, in case you hadn't seen that, we go just back. That's what we have now. There's the final design of the project, and three-quarter view. Another one when you come in. Right now, this is what you're looking at. I think everybody's familiar with what's left of the Governor's Inn Hotel. This would be we shared with the ARB. As you can, there's two views of the same spot. One is hidden by the trees, which is what it's actually going to look like, and then one is with the trees removed so you can see the buildings. But that's from the north, heading south on North Henry. And there it is when you cross train tracks heading north, what you see now, and what it will be replaced with. With both cases of the special use permit, the planning department on their previous previous approval by the council realized that it met the need. We were on the critical slope. Like he said, there's not too much reduce the runoff even more than what was required. And as other apartment complexes in the city, there are many that have a much higher density than what we've asked, and we're actually coming in reality at a lower density than what's in the special use permit.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
One question. So during the Planning Commission meeting, there was some comment about the condition of the existing building there. Could you talk about how this has been a training facility for fire, and I don't know if police was using it?
Yeah, I think you all have letters. The applicant has allowed the Williamsburg, James City, and Newport News fire departments to conduct specialized training at the site, which is those letters indicated they were most appreciative of, and it's a rare opportunity for them to be able to conduct that type of training in an actual building like this. So I think it was a great plus for all three communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're still in our public hearing, and I do have one speaker's card, Lori Wheel.
Hello. I need to give my address or anything? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
please. Your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Laurie Wheel, 412 Harriet Tubman Drive, across the street. Yes, so that was quite a good presentation. Certainly addressed some of the things that I've got on my list here. But, not having been in on all of the work that seems to already be done at this point, what didn't have that information, some of the improvement aspect of it. So this, of course, is just the reflections of someone who has lived on this side for almost 20, on this side of the tracks, that is, for almost 20 years, watching the traffic and everything building up. And so these were just my thoughts coming into it, so thank you for letting me share them. Just asking you to think carefully about this project. We don't feel that it's a good addition to Williamsburg's values and traditions. where council's being asked to break multiple recommended building parameters with the purpose of increasing the number of units, and we believe to maximize income. The buildings 3 stories tall blocked together do not seem attractive to us. The increased density will have a significant impact on traffic. I can imagine some type of a bridge over the train tracks or something at some point to handle more traffic. The precedent that this project sets following the student housing on Monticello Avenue will be difficult to resist going forward. We thought it looked to be student housing. That's not what I heard right here. I saw the word multi-family. So that's reassuring if that's the case. Because more student housing would not be friendly to families or children. We need more diversity in Williamsburg. We need to preserve our charm and vibrancy, I believe it's been called. Developers asking you to break the standard zoning rules. Sounds like 2, not just 1, but 2. This should not be granted unless the project presents something special, appeals to all, and is uplifting to the community. We just think there should be a really high bar. A query I have, why there were only 6 votes in the Planning Commission. Maybe, I don't know if you can address that. And so those are the thoughts of someone who's been here, and as I said, watching the changes, coming fairly gradually, but coming on, and we just feel that this is going to be just a big crunch and crush of change right here in our little city area. So thank you for the chance to share that.
Thank you, Ms. Wheel. Appreciate you coming forward. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak to this matter? Yes, ma'am. Welcome, and if you would state your name and address for the record, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Elitha Davis, E-L-E-T-H-A, Davis, D-A-V-I-S, 532 Dunning Street, Williamsburg, Virginia. I'm a long life resident, over 60 years, in Holland Park community, and I'm very concerned about the traffic and the impact of that development on our subdivision. I have been coming, I did speak at the Planning Commission, and it just kind of concerns me. I do realize that this will be, in some people's eyes, a very important physical development will benefit the city, but I do think people should consider the impact of the residents in Holland Park. I think it will be, with the traffic, a negative impact. It may be beneficial, but from my eyes, it looks like a negative impact. And I don't know, I'm sorry, I have a heart problem, so I'm real nervous, but
Doing fine.
I'm just concerned about that a lot. I know it's not important to people, but I'm really concerned about our sign. Has sentimental values for me, for people long last. I'm concerned about the bus stop. We had asked for different things in the bus stop. We were denied, and then when the developer came and it seemed like it was embraced with his ideas when we were trying to get the bus stop. I'm just concerned as a senior now with just the impact of the traffic, my main concern with the traffic in there. And I think, yeah, that's my concerns. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for coming forward. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to council for additional comments or questions. I do have one question. Mr. Small, I know you're over there checking the solar system. Can you talk a little bit about the traffic? I know traffic is nothing coming out of there today, but as a 200-room motel in the heyday, probably produced a lot of traffic, and I would imagine a whole lot more than what we would see from a 160-room apartment.
That actually is correct. Based on traffic generation, most hotels, they generate traffic all day long, as well as heavy in the evenings, comings and goings of the visitors that stay at that hotel. And that's why the entrance was designed that way. We did ask the consultant to go ahead and give us information on the before traffic situation and the after based on today's existing traffic along Henry Street. Because we also wanted to verify that a turn lane wasn't necessary. We also wanted to make sure that the spacing requirements were met between the railroad tracks, the entrance, and Henry Street going into Highland Park. So what we wanted to make sure was all of that worked, and it indeed does work really well. There are no turn lanes required because most of the peaks on the apartments are in the mornings and then also in the evening hour during that one time of day when everybody comes home from work. So you don't see as much, you might see a slightly higher, heavier load at that time, but it does not affect the operation of the roadway or the intersection.
Good, thank you. Any other questions while we have Mr. Small here?
Yeah, I do have, Mr. Small, I know there was another project that requested to encroach on the 30% slope, and appreciate you and Ms. Burke coming out and walking the property, because I learned a lot there. And I think Mr. Getty touched on this, but I just want to be sure. So in its current condition, with the addition of these apartments, it will actually improve the runoff as it currently exists?
Yes, Mark, if you can pull up the proposed site plan. What this shows is right along the edge, the northern border of the development and the parking lots. That was kind of the limit of the encroachment that they were allowed to make. All of that runoff from all of those parking lots actually does not flow out over the steeper slopes. So it's captured in the parking lots and ends up into the drainage system. They then have an underground storage facility that stores up that stormwater and releases it slowly over time. As part of the requirements for the SUP, they were required to lower that ratio, not really ratio, but the product of their volume and their peak flow by 70%. The normal requirement for development today is 80% reduction of that peak flow. And so we asked for an additional 10% on that in order to allow that. So their discharge, and they're discharging directly into the stream out back in one location, which is the only location where they really encroach on the slopes other than sanitary sewer crossing. So that's really, they are actually improving the direct runoff. The rest of the runoff that goes down on those slopes is exactly what the rain drops on them, and that's all. So this really is a great, vast improvement over the existing condition.
Okay,
To protect those slopes.
Any questions for Mr. Small while he's here?
Not for him, no.
Okay. So I'll go to, thank you, Mr. Small.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, do you have any comments or questions?
Just comments. I know, thank you, Mr. Small, because I knew that was a question that came up before from residents of Highland Park about the runoff, and some of them already experience flooding in their properties on, I guess, on Burbank that back up to that property. So that improvement, I'm sure, will be noticed. In addressing some of the comments that came up in the Planning Commission meeting, was about the affordable housing. And while this council, I know, is a priority for affordable housing, this may not be what everyone considers affordable housing. It may address some level of the affordable housing, or maybe you don't even call it affordable housing. However, as was pointed out earlier in this meeting, we don't have the option of negotiating proffers with the developer. So the fact that we have some units with a reduced rent rate that were brought forward by the developer is a positive, although it may not meet all of the needs of the community. So I think, based on comments from the last time this project was before us and today, I think it's going to be an advantageous project for the city.
Mr. Maslin?
I have a few questions for Aaron. And thanks for the city engineer. I know that before we approved it previously, the vice mayor and I were able to walk the site with the city engineer and understand what the engineering issues were, and how actually this will actually improve the site. So that really takes care of one of the questions. The second question is the increased density. So the zoning regulations allow city council to approve increased density. And there are about three things we looked at previously. One of which is the zoning what's the zoning in this area that we're looking at?
This particular parcel is zoned LB1 downtown, so it's the
Downtown.
limited business district downtown.
And as I recall, we actually looked at some of the density in other developments in this zoning and saw that this request was not out of line with that. Is that correct?
Correct. There are a number of other developments that are higher than this number.
Right, so this is not the highest density that will be in this zone. So number one. Number two, the zoning regulation allows us to increase density based on the characteristics of the project. And then remembering that this actually came to council before the affordable housing report was presented to us. And this was sort of new territory where we had a developer coming to us who could have applied for the increased density without offering below market rent units. So this was really our first step at looking at concepts like that. And then when we had the report subsequent, going forward, we'll be able to look at, the whole continuum of affordable housing, from low income to workforce housing to what's affordable housing for young professionals. So I think this was a good first step there. So I'm in favor of continuing approval of this project.
So I thank you for the presentation to everyone here today, and I have a couple questions similar to Mr. Maslin's. One question is, by right, the developer can build a certain number of units. Is that correct?
Correct. By right, they can build 14 units per acre.
And can you, for the site, can you give me a total number?
I can.
Okay.
At 14 units per acre, that would be 124 units.
Okay. So whether we do anything at all, he can go ahead and build apartment buildings that will house 124 people. So we're asking for 162 minus 124 gives us an additional 18, 28?
38 units
38.
total.
Yeah. So as far, and of those 38, I think there's a number that are slated for affordable.
So the below market rate units, there would be 21 of those proffered units.
Okay, so a little bit more than half of the additional units that he's asking for would be for the affordable housing.
Correct.
And as Mr. Maslin said, there's all levels of affordable housing. And as a member of the Housing Committee, that was brought out to us very strongly. And I think one of the other things that was brought out to us is that one of the reasons that the city has lost a lot of affordable housing for young professionals, William and Mary faculty and staff, is that so many of our housing units that were used for them have now been purchased by investors and are used for typically 3 college students who can afford the sum of that. I heard from one of my neighbors who's a professor that entering faculty staff for around the range of $1,500 to $1,700. So I think there's a couple things here that have resulted in us not having enough units for them. And an investor is not limited to the number of properties that he or she can purchase in the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at this point, there's no even request out to them to provide a certain number of their units for affordable housing. So they can rent all of theirs at a market rate, whereas Castle Development has offered to rent a percentage at affordable housing rate. And the only other thing was, we have seen other requests for increased density in Williamsburg, I think, as Mr. Maslin mentioned, and one just not too far from here on Prince George Street. I wasn't here when that occurred, and I don't think you were either.
I was not. That was in.
But as I understand, there was a special use permit. Mayor Pons may have been on Planning Commission then, to increase the density to allow for the redevelopment of that project.
Yes.
And I think we have seen that it has made a vast difference both in the livability and the vibrancy for Prince George Street. And for some of those reasons, I'm in support of this project, because I think it will take a decrepit, unused area of land and provide some vibrancy. It'll bring some people in town, and overall, I don't feel it'll be that much greater number of people than what the project would provide by right. So, thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you very much, Mr. Getty and Mr. Niles, for your presentation and now many months of work on this. Mr. Getty, you noted the fact that this was during a pandemic, so I'm sure that has made developments difficult. It certainly has for some of the things that council is working on from an infrastructure standpoint at the moment. I'd like to provide a little context around my thoughts. I don't have any additional questions after my questions to the applicant. Back in September of 2020, I voted in favor of this project, and I think that's because the aspects, as it was mentioned by you, Mr. Nile, are very good, and that what's currently standing there, while a great training ground, and you all are kind to have offered that to some of our first responders, it is really a decrepit building. What's shifted, though, since then are a couple of different things, which has shifted some of my own thinking as well. And there are really three major ones that come to mind. The first is, back in September of 2020, we hadn't yet seen the results of the Affordable Housing Work Group, the one that Councilwoman Ramsey mentioned that she and I were able to serve on. And I think now, having seen some of that work, it should be Williamsburg's goal going forward to do a couple of things. One being define locally what affordability really means for us, given that developers understandably right now are using HUD definitions, which may not target the demographic we try to help in Williamsburg. And the second is to have expectations around developments that are coming into the city, especially those that we provide proffers to, on exactly where affordability should be. We found in Williamsburg 2000 to 2018 or so, the renting price of units has really increased drastically. Quoting the housing study from years back from Professor Sarah Stafford at William & Mary, they've gone from about $800 being around 80% of the inventory of the city to less than 20%. And units that are renting at about $1,500 or so is going from about 5% to 20%. So costliness is coming into the city as we've found rents going up over the years. One of the things that our affordable housing group found. Yet despite that, it was really the low income and very low income folks within Williamsburg that we were needing to help. We ended up in our presentation to council coming up with a goal of about 800 units, jumping up to 1,000 units that needed to be provided by 2040. And that's from the 2021 Housing Needs Assessment. So as I see it, while that is noble to include some affordability sides of this development, I don't think it is necessarily addressing the demographic that we need to have, or the socioeconomic scale of those that are in especially need of housing here. And a couple more numbers around that. The new price, as I understand it, given that the AMI has increased from 2020, is now $1,268 per unit. So if you take that over the course of a year, that's going to be $15,216, which is actually exactly 30% of the 80% of AMI figure at about $51,000 per year. And it's a well-known figure, that 30%, meaning if you're spending below 30%, then you're doing well as far as your housing costs. If you're spending above, then you're considered housing stressed. And learning, understandably, that the development would also not include the cost of utilities or that being water and electricity it seems to me that renting at the exact rate of 30% of that 80% of the AMI number means that the additional fees will actually tick up the renters so that they are spending more than 30% of their income on their affordable units, those 21 that the development has. The third thing that I think changed was simply the recommendations and makeup of our planning commission. The vote initially was 4-1, with I believe 1 abstaining and 1 absent as well. And then just recently, last month, it ended up being 3-3 and not resulting in a recommendation. And I commend some of the comments of other members of the Planning Commission. I agree with Mr. Granger's comments around affordability, but it was Mr. Sokolowski's that were especially poignant to me and why I asked about the AMI raising. Because as we bring in more apartments into the city, the AMI is likely to increase, and those units that we've capped at 80% of the area median income are also going to go up. And I'll add to that too, that the AMI, as you mentioned, and is understandable, is usually raising by a little bit every year, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, as the saying goes, a high tide raises all boats. Usually it's those in the low income category that don't see incomes raise, while those in the upper category do. And so it's the luxury apartments and other developments that increase the AMI, meaning developments that may have their rents tied to 80% are also going to go up. But those that are paying those lower levels might not have seen their own wages go up. As a final point, I am aware, as Councilman Maslin has said, that this is more of a re-permitting. We have accepted this as a development here. We are instead, given that that permit had a year sunset clause, just allowing it to go again. And I can count noses and recognize that there very well might be that this development goes forward. So I think the last thing that I'll say is that if we as a city want to talk about affordable housing, given that we now have the results from the Affordable Housing Work Group, seeing them 4 months ago, but not having seen recommendations come again in front of council since, that we really need to be serious about it. So to me, that means by early summer or so, by June, let's say, seeing some of the more low-hanging fruit parts of that affordable housing study come back in front of council, such as affordable accessory units or soft density or increasing the cap of hotel motel conversions to affordable housing. Those are all my comments. Again, I thank you all very much for the time. I try to explain what I'm thinking out of respect for you both. I know a lot of work has gone into this. I do not, though, plan to support the permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. So, to me, when I look at what's there today and what could be built by right, I think having this new product come in, by right meaning only 124, the applicants asked for a higher density, and in return for that, they've offered to provide some affordable housing. Now, there could be some debate on what the actual affordability is and how that relates to people that are at the lower income spectrum. But I think it's a generous offer that the developers made to include that in the development. This is private money coming in which will rebuild this this blighted site, eliminating this old motel that has outlived its life cycle, and in process deliver a product that will bring new housing opportunities for families. They have said that this is not designed for student housing, so I can imagine there may be some students there. But to be able to house people that work in the community at all different spectrums, I think is a good thing. It helps bring some economic vitality, just more people to the downtown area, which is one of our goals. And just wanted to go back to traffic real quick. Having an old hotel that's now an apartment, traffic is much, much less. And so thank you, Mr. Small, for coming forward and kind of walking us through the science of that. So with that, I'm going to support the application as well. Any other comments? There's none. Somebody like to make a motion on both of these?
So I move that City Council approve PCR 21-18, a request of Castle Development Partners for a special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% up to 1.5 acres as provided in zoning ordinance section 21-262. I also move that City Council approve PCR 21-017, a request of Castle Development Partners for a special use permit to increase the density allowed in the limited business downtown district, LB1, with proffers from 14 units per net acre to 19 units per net acre in accordance with the proffers made September 15, 2020. These requests are for the future development of 162 apartments located at 506 North Henry Street.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Nope.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent? Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. So it takes us now to reports. We have our monthly financial statement. Yeah,
Want to talk?
sure, go ahead, Ted. Sorry, thank you.
So just an idea that we've been talking about. So this is an example where, under normal conditions, we would have expected the site plan to be submitted and reviewed within one year, which is what our zoning allows for. And we know that, we think next month, we may be seeing a similar request for the water project, assuming everything goes through the Planning Commission this month. So here are two examples where we've got, competent developers trying to pursue these projects and not being able to meet the one-year timeline, mainly because of the COVID implications. So what I think we should talk about is maybe asking the city attorney to craft some language that would allow the staff, the planning department, to work with an applicant who has gotten approval, is pursuing it for the one-year timeline, but based on extenuating circumstances and staff discretion, allowing them to extend the deadline by up to 6 months.
So I think it's a good idea, given where we are with COVID, and we all know there are factors that are out of control for the developer. So is that something that we could ask that staff look into and come back with a recommendation? I think it'd be my goal would be to if a developer falls into a delay, to be able to come to staff and ask for an extension of up to 6 months. I think that's a good amount of time. And if it's legitimate reasons, then staff can authorize the extension of the permit.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. The purpose of the short timeline is to make sure that when an application comes before the city council, it's ready for action. And so I wouldn't want to change that deadline, but I think allowing the staff to give some flexibility to the developer who's trying is a good idea. So we can come up with something and bring it back to council.
Okay, good.
And that's a zoning text amendment, so it's going to be a little bit before it comes before council.
Okay.
It's going to have to go to the planning commission first.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Thank you.
Good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Maslin. Okay, so now reports. Did I see Ms. Dameron? Oh, there she is. Monthly financial statement. Ms. Dameron.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. We began our report with the recovery report, and what we're comparing is column F, which is our actual results as of January 31st, 2022, to column E, which is what we had projected or where we projected to be at this point in time. And then column G shows the variance. And I would highlight, first of all, that we only have one revenue source presented that is falling below the projection, and that's our tourism sales tax. The rest of them are ahead of projection, and I would particularly draw your attention to the lodging and meals because that continues to grow each month ahead of the projection. So very good news there. I would also note that I typically like to compare to where we were in FY19 before the COVID hit. And the items that I have highlighted are ones that the actual results are not yet ahead of where we were in January for fiscal year 2019. And of course, with the business, professional, and occupational license tax, that's really a little early yet. There's just some difference in timing there. And in fact, I have had some preliminary conversations with our Commissioner of Revenue, Lori Overy, and what she's seeing in the reports. And I think we would anticipate that when we get into March, we should hoping for a positive variance there. And then with our sales tax, we're slightly below where we were in 19, but I have to remind you that in December and January, we had in each month a 100,000 deduction from our distribution that should have gone in prior periods to another locality. And when you consider that, we're really ahead of where we would have been. And then, of course, our tourism and our $2 lodging tax continue to lag behind where we were in FY19. So I have provided for everything except for the business and occupational license, a projection of where I anticipate at this point we may end fiscal year 22. And you can see that with that information, I have a total increase above budget of 1.8 million, and of that 1.8, 1.4 resides in the general fund. So I think very good news, and we're anticipating the trend will continue. Having said that, in the general fund, I'm not seeing any other revenue trends that are of concern. Expenditures are in line with budget, and the same can be said of the capital improvement fund and the tourism fund. And so with the utility fund, we're operating very well in comparison to budget, maybe slightly ahead of budget. We are showing a draw from reserves of $103,000 at this point. I'm not at all concerned about that given two factors. One, we had budgeted to draw $1.3 million, and as I think was shared at the retreat, I don't anticipate needing that full draw. However, I will note that in the current period, if you look at the sewage system expenditures, they seem high, especially comparing to the previous year, and that's simply because we had a bill that was paid to Hampton Road Sanitation District in January this year. Last year it was February, and the timing of that bill is such that we have, in effect, paid Hampton Road Sanitation District for a larger portion of items that were billed and are not yet due from our customers. So all in all, the utility fund is also performing very well at this point. And then finally, we included an update for the ARPA expenditures in this report. It's a little bit more simplified than the report I showed last month, largely because we are reanalyzing what the final rule will mean to both our lost revenue numbers. And so we took out the restricted and unrestricted at this point. I would anticipate that we'll be updating this report again in March, as we need to analyze how that's going to impact our framework and have that ready to report on at the end of April. And that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dammer. No questions. And looking through the full report, I see that some of the tax receipts are even exceeding 2018 numbers. So that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Timing is everything, because I think this is a question for our assistant city manager. We'll give her time to sit down. Previously, we talked about the governor's intent to eliminate sales tax on groceries. And I think the grocery sales tax portion for our sales tax, is that about $500,000?
Close, yes.
About $500,000. And we know that the Virginia Municipal League is lobbying for legislation that would require that the state make localities whole once that would go into effect. And I was just wondering if we have any updates from Richmond.
Good timing, Councilman Maslin. Just returned from Richmond. Thought you were joking when I walked in. So the legislation about the grocery tax is moving forward in the House. There's some delay in the Senate Finance Committee and There's a chance it could be studied this summer and brought back next year with more understanding of the impact, but all of that is still unknown. Most likely, it will be negotiated during the budget between the House and the Senate. But you're right, there are many of us up there reminding the General Assembly of the effect that will have on local government and on transportation.
Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Rogers?
Director Dameron, thank you as always for your time. I too have no questions.
Thank you very much. So that takes us now to City Manager's report. Mr. Trivette?
None this month.
Shelton, anything from the
Nothing
attorney?
today.
Is there any unfinished business?
No, sir.
Okay. So new business. Vice Mayor.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I move that City Council appoint Bill Hamilton to the Planning Commission for a term to expire December 31st, 2025. Robert Yule to the Architectural Review Board to fill the unexpired term of Marcy Leibel for a term to expire December 31, 2023. And Soheeb Asmani to the Economic Development Authority to fill the unexpired term of John Kale for a term to expire June 30, 2022.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. That takes us now to open forum, which again is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to come forward who may wish to speak to council. Seeing none, I'll close the open forum, and is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.